So natural. So that noise you're hearing is the unmistakable sound of a pint of Guinness clinking a cup of coffee.
I'd know it anywhere.
You do well, because we are home in Ireland.
Yes.
It's Christmas time,
And you're listening to the Cinema.
and we're in a pub.
So
So excuse the
but I needed a coffee.
some background murmur here.
Yes.
And I needed a pint of Guinness. I'm Dave. This is my wife Kathy.
Hello.
This is the Cinemile where we walk home from the movies. Today we are looking back on the year that was 2018.
And we're not even talking about movies because we watch a lot of TV, probably more TV than we watch movies. And we did an episode last year where we did kind of a bonus best of TV, just because we felt like it. And we ended up getting a lot of listens and lots of feedback and lots of people who said they really enjoyed it. So we decided to do it again. And honestly, it was hard for me to pick shows because there's been such amazing TV this year. I've found this list easier to do, as in I had a lot more to put in it than I had with my movie list this year. It's been a great year for TV.
I'm with you, because overall, when I look at all of these TV shows and then I look at all of the movies that we had seen, the quality of the TV list is like 10 times better.
But partly that is because we've got access to all premium TV, right? We've got Sky, we've got Netflix, we've got Amazon, we've got free to air. Whereas cinema, a lot of the really quality cinema, we just don't have immediate access to because we don't live near an art house cinema. We have like mainstream titles. We can't go to the cinema as much as we want to because we have a kid. Whereas TV, it's right there on our doorstep. It's right there in our living room, and
it's on our doorstep. It gets delivered.
It gets delivered to us. But you know what I mean? It's a lot easier to access premium TV than it is to access premium movies. And I think that's probably more of a factor in it than the quality of. I'm sure you could pick out amazing quality movie titles this year that we've just not seen, whereas we've seen the big TV ones. So what we're going to do today is, as we did last year, we're going to do our top 5 of the year, counting backwards. And as we do with our movie review, neither of us know the other one's list, which is like highly thrilling. We're very secretive about these lists in our house. Then we're going to do honourable mentions.
Except you're looking at mine.
I'm not
Don't be looking at my notes.
I'm looking at my coffee. Then we do honourable mentions, things that didn't quite cut the top 5 but that we really enjoyed. Then we do disappointing, because there's some disappointing TV out there. Guilty pleasures, and things we should have seen but didn't see because for whatever reason we didn't get around to watching them. But they sit in our planner waiting to someday be watched.
Everyone got those things.
Everyone's got those things. It's usually the slightly higher brow things that you think, I'll watch that someday.
Like the time we rented Rabbit Proof Friends 3 times from the DVD shop and never watched
it.
All right.
Right, straight to it. Dave, what's your number 5?
My number 5 movie.
TV show.
Wait, what? The Guinness is kicking in.
Also, we've ordered some food, so we may have to pause when the food arrives, FYI.
Or I could just chow down loudly down into a microphone.
It's lovely to eat.
Everyone would love that.
Yeah.
My number 5 TV show of the year is one you didn't watch, but I watched.
We watch lots of TV separately, by the way, so these lists could be quite different.
It's season 2 of American Vandal. So for anyone who doesn't know, American Vandal is I guess simplistically speaking, a mockumentary. It's a fake documentary.
That's what a mockumentary is.
Yeah, but I feel like mockumentary doesn't do this show justice because this is a meticulously crafted satire of the modern day phenomenon of podcasts, like true crime podcasts, for instance, like Serial,
or TV, like Making a Murderer.
Exactly, all this stuff. So it's a Netflix produced show which is parodying what Netflix does very well in many other circumstances. So you've got the Staircase, the Nun, not the Nun, the Keeper, all these things. There's hundreds of these things, and they're very compelling. But what this show not only does so well is nails the format of those things perfectly and sort of riffs on it for comedy, but also manages to be a compelling true crime story in its own right, especially when it's dealing with such the joke is that it's dealing with a particularly silly subject matter, but it's treated with dead seriousness. Like, this is not it's like South Park, and the best sort of comedy is done with complete like seriousness. It's po-faced. I banged on about season 1.
You did last year, didn't you? It was on your list.
So largely, I think it was definitely on my list.
And both times I've watched the first episode and then gone, I'm done with it now.
But that's the thing with this show. You can, and this happened to me. I looked at the trailer for this, and then it popped up on Netflix, and I thought, all right, like that seems like a one note joke. Like how are they going to wring 10 episodes out of this? And I started watching it, and then slowly it just gets its claws into you, and by the end I was begging to know who drew the dicks in season 1.
And in this one, it's who made everyone poo by spiking their drink.
Yeah, so in this one, without no spoil, so we should have said there won't be any spoilers here for any of these shows beyond the basic premise.
Yeah.
But the premise of the season 2 is you've got the same documentary movie makers from season 1, same high school students, but this one is the case of the third burglar who managed to feed an entire school laxatives, and they all shat themselves at the exact same time.
And again, Dave, I'll take your word for it that it's a great show, but I'm not going to watch
it. Oh,
it's
so good. But the incident is called the Brownout. There's so many funny names for this stuff. And to the point where we started calling toilet emergencies with our son brownouts.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great term. It's a great term.
But anyway, I won't bang on any more about it. It doesn't look like it will be great. It is great. Please give it a chance.
Okay, and that's on Netflix. So we'll tell you where we watched all these, so you can access them. And speaking of shows we've seen before and have been on this list before, I have in my number 5 a show that I had in my list last year, which is Insecure season 3. I love this show. Dave, you kind of stopped watching it, or else I went ahead without you. I don't know which one. I think I went ahead without you, and then you couldn't catch up.
Well, quickly, I was less interested in watching it. The show, I think, is very good, and I like the writing, and I like the leads. But it just didn't grab me. I'm not compelled by any of the stories.
It's one of those shows that
just didn't fancy sticking with it.
And so it's a HBO show, so I watch it on Atlantic, and it is one of those shows that, like, I can see how if you maybe kind of stop watching it, it's hard enough to get back into again. But this is what I really like about it, actually. And it took me a while to get back in again. I have to say, like, I recorded loads of episodes before I started watching it, because there's no hook. It's not a Game of Thrones where you're dying to see what happens next. What it is so it's a show written by and created by and starring Issa Rae, who's an amazing, talented woman. She's in her early 30s. She's the first black woman to create and star in a cable show in the States. Like, she's done really groundbreaking stuff, and how she got started was she actually made like a web series called Awkward Black Girl, and it's honestly just like kind of regular stories about regular people, but with all the characters are black, and like it's shocking how rare that is on TV. Like, it's just outrageous, really, and everyone in the show is pretty much all the main characters are black, and it's just but that's not why I like it. Like, that's brilliant, but why I like it is because it's just such a lived-in world with characters that I love to watch, and it makes me laugh, but it's not laugh out loud comedy. Like, you're not rolling off your seat laughing. It's just like humorous, and it's in a setting I've never watched before. Like, she's a social worker, and she works in an office with all white people, and the racial politics are so funny in her office. And then it's just regular, like, women and going about their lives. Like, her best friend Molly always has amazing plots where she's like kind of a social climber, and she's a lawyer, and she's trying to make partner, and I just love the stuff they do with her work dynamic. I just love Issa Rae. Like, she's so endearing. I love watching her, and like as a character she's really funny. Like, she raps all the time in the mirror, and there's just all this weird stuff, but it's such a lived in feel. And like, it's a funny thing, the end of every season this happens to me, I'm just kind of watching it, I'm like engrossed in the world, I'm just enjoying it, I'll just go on to the next episode, and then suddenly the season ends because there's no real peak. Like, there's no kind of mad cliffhanger, or like you're not left on a peak, and then it ends, and every time it ends I go, oh, I didn't think this was the last episode, and I'm really disappointed. But yeah, I just love it. Honestly, it's just one of my favourite shows in the world, and I recommend it to anyone who's looking for a good show. So yeah, that's my number 5. Dave, number 4?
My number 4 of the year is American Crime Story Versace.
Assassination of Gianni Versace.
Oh yeah, the assassination of Giovanni Versace.
And I think we had American Crime Story last year on our list, though. Jason,
you did.
I did. Yeah.
I hadn't really watched it. I sort of dipped in and out.
Yeah.
But from what I saw of that, it looked excellent.
It was brilliant.
So this is a season 2 of American Crime Story, which will focus on a different true crime story and the sort of, I would say, slightly fictionalized retelling, or it's this in this instance it is based on a book, which is a sort of biographical / true crime telling of the incident of the assassination of Giovanni Versace. This was a brilliant show. This is a brilliant series. I didn't know anything not a bit about the incident, and I would recommend anybody who doesn't. So I won't speak to the detail of it because I would say to me it was a surprise, and the detail of it is fascinating, particularly the character of the person who
Andrew Cunanan.
Andrew Cunanan, yes, who assassinated him, and it's kind of like a telling of both. It gives you a little bit of insight into Giovanni Versace as a character, but really this is Andrew Cunanan's story, which is an interesting point of view because this is the story of the man who killed him. But basically, this is also a great bit of sort of storytelling. It's told largely in reverse, sort of Memento style, which can be a gimmick, but it really works
here,
very effectively really here. Quick shout out to Edgar Ramirez, who played Giovanni Versace. I thought he did an excellent job. Penelope Cruz shows up in a really sort of bizarre performance of Donatella Versace.
It was weird. But like Penelope Cruz is Spanish, doing like this impeccable Italian accent, which like at one point I nearly had to subtitle because I couldn't understand her.
But it's a really interesting performance, and I think the two of them are actually friends in real life. And the story, I mean, the details of the story are horrifying.
And yet you somehow end up rooting for Andrew. I mean, it's weird. Well, you're kind of by the end rooting for him, which is weird.
Not really. They do a very good. Yeah, it says a lot about you. They do a very good job of. I mean, it's a very. You don't want to say that they humanized a murderer,
but they did.
But they kind of did, or at least they. You can't empathise with his actions, but they fleshed him out. It's a very interesting character study.
Yeah.
A quick note: I should say the Versace family basically came out and said that they think this is all a work of fiction and it's all nonsense, particularly the details around
Oh God, I'd be
Giovanni's
raging.
life.
If I was his family, I would be raging about this
But
show.
interestingly, I read that Donatella and Versace and Penelope Cruz are good friends in real life, and she was up for the Golden Globe, and Donatella sent her like a hamper to her dressing room saying good luck.
That's cool.
There's quite interesting sort of behind the scenes stuff around this.
Yeah.
But anyway, massively recommend. Do check it out.
And we watched that one on BBC, right?
We did.
Might
still be on the iPlayer, I'm not so sure.
Do you know what they did? They brought it back again, and it was available on catch up again because recently someone I worked with watched it, but I don't know if it's still there.
And where is it available for our American listeners?
Don't know.
FX.
Sorry,
I think it's an FX show. I'm almost
probably because he does mostly stuff. So my number 4 is is a Netflix show, my first Netflix show. The Haunting of Hill House, is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah. I kept forgetting the name slightly, but oh my God, did I love the show! And this is one we watched together, and we absolutely we binged through it as much as we could, but it was so scary that we could only watch one episode at a time. We watched it over the space of about a week, which is good going for us at the moment because we're like really tired of the baby and work and everything, and we just couldn't. And I hate horror, right? I don't watch horror. And then this year I did go and see Hereditary because it was so acclaimed and enjoyed it. And then I just loved The Haunting of Hill House. But why I loved it is, okay, putting aside the horror stuff for a minute, it's basically This Is Us. It's an amazing family, like, melodrama told really emotively through, like, different perspectives. And each episode's, like, through the perspective of a different character, which I always really enjoy. And they just did it so well. Like, it's such a well-paced show. And the horror stuff, like, there was a truly scary moment where we both actually screamed on the sofa. That was so good.
That was a jump scare.
A jump scare that was just fucking brilliant. Which is what I want from horror. Like, I hate when there's no jump scares in a horror. I'm like, what am I spending my money on? One of the things I really liked about it is that there was like a stellar ensemble cast, and it didn't do that thing that so many like prestige shows do now, where they kind of get in loads of big names. Like something like Big Little Lies, which I'm not dissing because I loved that show and it was my number 1 show last year. But that's just The Cell is this huge cast. Power. Whereas this is like The Cell is the amazing ensemble. Now, like, I recognise that.
Hang on, that's not The Cell. That's not the marketing.
No, I'm saying like that's what keeps you in because the ensemble is so amazing. It's not like there's some recognisable people in there, but ultimately, you know, there's no Nicole Kidman's. Like, funnily enough, the guy who plays Elliot in E.T. is a grown up in this, which I didn't realise until someone told me. And as soon as they told me, I was like, oh my God, of course it's him.
Because he looks exactly the same.
Yeah,
but it's
honestly the best of fun as well. As much as there's really grim themes and it's scary. Like, it was just a fun, perfect sit-down, complete escapism show. Like, just done so well. And this isn't a spoiler, but there's one character in the show called the Bent Neck Lady, and like I am haunted by that character. Like, I was up with Oscar like a week or two ago in the middle of the night.
Did you see her?
And I swear to God, I was like, it was when we were right in the peak of watching the show, and I was kind of half asleep, and I was like walking around the room at 3 a.m, and I swear I saw the Bent Neck Lady.
God.
It was terrifying. It was leaving me chills. Like, I have to watch it before I went to bed. I'd have to read a chapter of a book or like just do something.
That's normal. You have to unwind from a
Food's
horror
coming.
movie. Yeah. Oh, we're
Thank
going to
you
pause.
so much. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you.
Brilliant.
Cheers.
Right, we'll leave that in a minute. So yeah, I just loved it. I just honestly thought it was the best of fun. It had scares, it had amazing family dynamics. I loved the cast. There was one slight slip up, I thought, where there was a character who's like a drug addict, and it kind of turned into an after school special a little bit. Like, when you've gone from watching stuff like The Wire we've watched, and then you watch this drug stuff, we were a bit like, it was well done, but it was just a bit like, it was a bit cheesy. It was almost like a bit of a Murder, She Wrote moment. But honestly, yeah, loved it. Never thought I'd have a horror show on my list, and absolutely loved, you know, the way the Netflix model, sometimes I don't like it, because with certain shows I want to wait week to week and like get the build up. But with Haunting of Hill House, I just wanted to binge it, and it was just really fun. Loved it.
And the creator of this is a horror director whose name I can't remember. But
Great. Thanks, Dave, for that insight.
But he basically sort of he created this. He directed one of the best episodes in this, which I think is episode 6. Which no spoilers, but it's got a lot of really brilliant camera sort of.
Really long shots.
It's very ambitious. It's full. It's like the whole episode's made up of maybe 4 long takes. Largely plays out like a play. Like, they built. It's worth just watching the behind the scenes stuff of this alone, because they built like huge sets that accompanied. So sets based in different time periods.
Oh my God, I love that.
That connected with each
other. I didn't even mention all the stuff in different time periods and different kid actors playing the adult actors. And the kid actors are incredible.
Yeah.
Because you so often see, and you know, bad kid actors for whatever reason, either they're not directed right or they're not cast well. These were just, you know, when you see a younger version cast and it's like perfection, the casting, and you love the kids, and you see so much in different time periods, which I love. Like, I'm always sucker for that. So yeah, that was
It's
awesome.
a brilliant show, really entertaining.
Dave, get it on your own list if you want to keep talking about it.
But the just
Okay,
quick
this is
note.
my list.
There's also, it's ridiculously
My
clever
list.
to sort of rewatch, because I watched a YouTube video which had like all the hidden ghosts in
Oh, really?
Haunting of Hill House. And there's
I need to do that.
We didn't even spot like 90% of them. The ghosts are in the background of almost every shot. Like, just they like absolutely infect the whole thing. They're inhabiting every frame, and sometimes you don't even notice it.
Well, what you're inhabiting is my list. So get back to your own.
Am I not allowed to talk about
No.
it?
What's
All right.
your number
What are we up to?
3?
My number 3 of the year is
Of the year,
Sharp Objects. So this is the HBO adaptation of Gillian Flynn's novel Sharp Objects, starring Amy Adams and Patricia Clarkson as her mother. And Amy Adams plays a journalist who is sent back to her hometown to investigate a series of missing children, which doesn't sound like a very interesting premise. It sounds like classic sort of out of the sort of classic crap crime setup nonsense in a novel. But really, for me, this isn't about the murder mystery stuff or any of that. And I think the show identifies that and puts that to the background. This is a superb character drama based on a protagonist's relationship with her past. It's a classic sort of setup, somebody returning to their hometown
it's the best.
after leaving years later. I mean, who's it famously somebody stated there are only 2 types of stories. A stranger arrives in town, or somebody goes on a destination, or something like that. So this is essentially
You've mangled that quote.
the former. I totally have. What is it?
Sorry, I'm too busy eating.
What is it? Someone goes on a journey, or a stranger arrives in town?
Yeah, basically.
And what's so good about this show is, I would say, the real star of this show is the director, Jean-Marc Vallée. So he basically directed every single episode of this show, and he directed every single episode of
Big
Big
Little
Little Lies. But
Which are two so different shows. It's
he
amazing.
infused a sort of this show feels hot and sweaty and
Ew,
gross.
Dave, that's even gross what you just
No,
said.
no, it is. It's like, it's atmospheric. Don't you think so?
I think it's
said
atmospheric. I don't think
said
it feels hot and sweaty.
It did. It looked hot and sweaty. I was sweating
It's not
watching
porn.
it. It's set in the deep south. I forget where exactly, but it's old school, rich family. The mother, played by Patricia Clarkson, is just superb as this sort of old, wealthy, sort of the richest person in town, owns like a pig factory. But it's a sort of a dirty looking show. It's got a brilliant soundtrack, which is another sort of hallmark of his that Big Little Lies had, like brilliant use of songs. He does a brilliant thing in expressing the character's memory. So he sort of visualizes her memories of the place and her as a child in the place in reality. So it's almost like Amy Adams, is seeing ghosts of her memories in front of herself.
Yeah.
But the way he cuts and edits this all together as well with the memories is just beautifully done. And at the centre of it all really is two brilliant performances from Amy Adams and Patricia Clarkson as her mother.
Yeah.
Which just like anytime they're on screen together,
It's amazing.
just
They're like
beautiful.
crackling together.
Oh, it's so good. And two other performances I like to call out are Eliza Scanlon, who plays Amma.
Yeah.
The sort of her younger sister,
Emma.
and Henry Czerny. I don't know how to say his name, but he plays Amma's father. And we were talking
he's
about
brilliant.
him recently on our Mission Impossible.
Yeah, he's in the first Mission
podcast.
Impossible movie.
So he plays the agent hunting Tom Cruise in
So
the first
good.
Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Who we were talking about doesn't get enough credit. He's a brilliant
He's amazing.
sort of.
He was a
false
fantastic.
Tom Cruise in that.
He was a fantastic pantomime villain in the show, which was one of my big guilty pleasures a few years ago. Revenge. He was amazing in
Oh,
Revenge.
yeah.
He's just like the campus performer. He's just so good. But he was perfection. He was Alan in this, wasn't he? So good. You
Yeah,
always just wanted to
he's-
see what Alan was
he's
doing
a
in every
brilliant,
scene.
brilliant
He was like the
character
ghosts
actor.
in the background of Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
He's just there.
But anyway, that's like high recommend. We watched that on Sky Atlantic here, and it's HBO
Yeah.
in the States, I think. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And what next? Okay, so my number 3 is one that you've already covered, which is why I was not saying too much, in the assassination of Gianni Versace. Or is it Gianni or Giovanni? Giovanni. Okay, so you said a lot, so I won't say too much on it, but I think one of the things you kind of didn't stress enough was the amazing performance of Darren Criss. It's literally the performance of a lifetime. He was like, this is just a completely overused expression, but I can't think of how else to describe it. He just like tour de force of energy on screen. Like, honestly, he manages to play a character that's like charismatic, terrifying. He's a compulsive liar. He's horrific. He commits horrific crimes, and yet I was genuinely rooting for him. Now, part of that is the backwards way they told the story as well. So I guess we're more and more distanced from the crime in a way, and this was probably one of the intents of doing that. You see the crime first. So by the time you're like 7 episodes in, you're so far removed from that you're actually like just following this guy, and his performance was incredible. Like, I don't know if I've actually loved a character more on screen this year, and that's like a character who's horrific, because he humanized him and he gave him such dimension, and the character was such a liar, and like watching him acting someone who was lying so profusely was just like something else. And he's just camp as hell. Like, he's amazing, and the character, like his character, and I know, look, it's based on real life, but like a lot of the stuff is, obviously like dramatized and fictionalized, but his character, the childhood his character had, I have never seen or heard of anything like it. And I did like read up a lot on it afterwards, and apparently a lot of that's like largely true. So I won't go into spoilers on it's not spoilers in the show, but like how he was raised and how that kind of fed into what he become was really fascinating. And the backwards way it was told. And he didn't just kill Gianni Versace, he killed other people as well. Like, he was on the FBI's most wanted list, and it's a huge thing in the 90s. And as Dave said, obviously it's fascinating just to watch that portrayal of 90s life as well for gay men in America. And, you know, in this as well, there is stuff around AIDS and, like, there's so much discrimination, and it's just a world I really enjoyed being in, albeit I found some episodes really distressing to watch because, you know, and this is why I'm actually not someone who watches true crime stuff. Like we mentioned, things like Making a Murder and those Netflix stuff, I never watch them, and I don't like them because I really truly don't think that it's right for people to make money, and I really think it's not right for, like, you know, you've got these channels where they just have like all this true crime stuff, and it makes me feel really sick to my stomach, to be honest. And so I had a big moral dilemma with this one because it's, you know, real people actually died. It's not just entertainment. And the scenes where you were looking at real people, and in particular there's a character called David, and you're just devastated. Like, it's devastating what happened to him, and that's why I found this so weird to watch, because like I'm rooting for this guy because I'm viewing him as a fictional character, and then you're kind of seeing the impact of like real death, and in a way it left me feeling a bit strange, but also dying to see, because we watched this weekly on BBC, like dying to see the next episode. So overall, I had like really mixed feelings on it, but it made me think a lot, and I enjoyed it a lot, and it made me like really emotional, and I think that's a sign of an amazing drama. Like, and I'm such a fan of Ryan Murphy. As I mentioned, he's another show out this year called 911, which is much lighter than this, quite trivial, but still really like he just does everything really well. Like, there's nothing half-hearted that comes from him. Like, 911 is the best kind of action-y rescue show I've seen, and I watch a lot of them, you know, like a lot of, I'm big into Greys and all those sorts of things. Like, he just does everything right, to be honest. And I think the American Horror Story strand, I'm now like really, really impressed by. And another one he did last year that I probably had on my list, but I can't remember. Oh God, I hope it on last year's list, or it should have been on this year's list. Feud. To Betty Davis and Joan Crawford. Damn it!
Yeah.
Right, okay. Look, Feud and Gianni Versace are like half and half.
Do you want to talk about Feud now?
Feud's amazing. Oh God!
So stick it as a last minute
amendment. Yeah, Feud was his dramatisation of the feud between Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, and I absolutely loved every minute of it. More than this, because at least I didn't have the moral ambiguity of feeling guilty for watching it. So yeah, anyway, that is my number 3.
You're right to say, though, it is a little bit troubling to watch something that a family hasn't signed off on and is actually actively saying is a load of bullshit.
The family of some of the victims, yeah.
Yeah, as in the case of the Versace family.
And I'm sure the others weren't happy either.
Of any of this message.
There's no way the other families were happy with it.
Possibly.
Okay, Dave, your number 2 of the year?
My number 2 of the year is BoJack Horseman Season 5.
Was this your number 1 last year?
This was my number 1 last year.
Yeah.
I love this show so much. I cannot recommend it enough to people, to the point where I basically just shout about the show to everyone I see all the time, and I finally badgered my friend Mike into watching it, and now he's watched all 5 seasons and is as obsessed as I am.
I've heard such good things, but I always feel like this now when something's in its 5th season. Like, I've obviously watched the odd episode with you, but I'm not properly into it, and now I feel like 5 seasons is too many. When the hell would I have time to go back and watch them all?
I appreciate that. I've got that feeling about a lot of shows, but this to me is the most human show on television, and it's about a lot of anthropomorphized animals. It is, and also I will say it didn't grab me instantly. I actually threw this on many years ago when it first came out, watched 2 episodes in a row, didn't like it, and then parked it for a long time until I saw it getting such rave reviews and went back to it. And so it is a little bit of a grower. You do have to sort of settle into it a bit. It's also very cynical and largely maudlin. It doesn't have an optimistic view of humanity or its main protagonist. Mm-hmm. He constantly disappoints. It's like watching an indie movie with an awful character who eventually realizes the error of his ways by the end. Except that BoJack is 5 series in and has only gotten worse.
Maybe because it's not ended yet. Let's hope in the last episode he learns.
But you never stop rooting for him. You never stop rooting for him, even though he makes mistake after mistake and kind of becomes more horrible in many ways. But he hates himself for it.
Why does it move from your number 1 to your number 2, though? Does this season not deliver as much as the last season did?
No, not at all. In fact, if anything, this show has maintained its quality throughout, if not improved. it's never dipped in quality. So this isn't an indication that the BoJack Horseman isn't as good as it was last year. It's an indication that my number one is the best show I've seen this year.
I'm guessing your number one, actually. I've guessed it.
by quite a mile. But BoJack Horseman, there are 2 episodes in particular I'd like to call out in this season. One of, I don't know the episode numbers, but one of which is again, no spoilers, but one of which is told entirely in one room at a funeral. And it's a eulogy. The whole episode is a eulogy. And sounds like a gimmick, but they pull it off massively. And the writing in this show is just absolutely beautiful. Secondly, there's a brilliant episode in which the lines of reality and the TV show that BoJack Horseman is filming and his own reality are completely melded and blurred, so that neither you nor he know which one is real. And it's superbly done. The creators of this show and the writing is so confident. The animation is lovely. They've even managed to dimensionalize the one-note background characters, such as
so they're not one note.
But they were, and they start off as one note, like the joke roommate, his agent.
Well, that's like any good sitcom, like The Office, right? The first few weeks, you don't know all the characters either, and then they get more and more developed.
No, but as in, actually, they've been written as like their only defining characteristic is this thing, and then they manage to each season push things on, so that by the time you're here, they're almost more human than him, or more interesting in many ways, and they have their own plots. They're fully fledged storylines. You get backstories of them all. This is just an amazing show, and it's also insanely hilarious. There's a whole thing with a sex robot in this one, which is some of the funniest stuff I've
Okay, now Dave, you're rambling. I'm literally signifying to Dave here to wrap it up.
I'll stop.
Signaling.
I just love BoJack Horseman so much, and not enough people are watching it. It's on Netflix.
Okay, so my number 2 of the year, I think I may be preempting your number 1 of the year, is Succession, which we watched on Atlantic, and it's a HBO drama. Now, I'm sure this is your number 1. You don't have to tell me yet. But seeing as you're doing your number 1 next, if this is your number 1, we should both just talk about it. What do you think?
Do you want me to announce it then?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, my number 1 of the year is Succession.
Okay,
Yeah.
My number 2 of the year. So we'll chat about Succession. So I'll go first then. It's a funny one. It's one of these shows that you hear everyone saying, oh my God, you have to watch Succession. It's the best show of the year. And I thought, well, it's not really for me, because we watched the first episode and immediately I didn't enjoy it, because straight away it's like, oh great, another drama about privileged, mainly white men, got loads of money, they're really horrible, and really,
they're all white.
Mostly men, I meant to say, sorry. They're all white,
yeah.
And mostly men, and they're all rich. So to me that was just like, nah. And then we watched the episode 1 and I thought, yeah, I'm kind of done with it. And then enough people whose taste I really trust, and this is where recommendations really important with things like this, because everyone's time poor, and committing to a show that has like 10 episodes like this is actually quite a big commitment. And we went back, and it kind of builds and builds, and honestly has the best theme music I've ever heard in a show, and could knock it out of my head. And by episode 5 onwards, episodes 5 to 10, I literally thought I was going to have a heart attack at the end of every episode. It was so exciting. It's pure melodrama, right? It's like a better made, funnier version of things like I mentioned, like Revenge, or even going back to the 80s of like, your Dynasties or your Dallas or whatever, but it's like that on like high octane. It's so funny. It's written by, I can't remember his name, the writer of The Thick of It. And
no, he was one of the writers of The Thick of It. His name is Jeremy. No, but he wasn't the Armando Iannucci.
Well, yeah, but okay.
Writer.
Our writer, thanks,
He's
Dave.
Jeremy Armstrong is his name. He's the creator. He wrote on In the Thick of It, but he created Peep Show most famously.
Oh yeah, which is brilliant. And so this is like, what's brilliant about it is it's a drama, but it's funny. It's not a comedy, but actually some of the lines in this show are the funniest lines I've heard this year. So clever. You just feel that writing. I think somebody from Veep was writing on it as well, or was that him? It's all that kind of just really quick, really on it, clever dialogue. And again, this is another one that doesn't rely on a famous cast. But this show has the best ensemble I've seen in years, like years. And I put it ahead of Haunting of Hill House, which is difficult because they're brilliant as well. And honestly, Matthew McFadden, the English actor, is just like, he plays a character who so it's about a family. Basically, they're like kind of like a Murdoch-esque family, and their dad's a media mogul, and the kids are competing, to kind of succeed him. Hence
As
the name
you
of the
might
title.
guess, yeah.
And this guy Tom, played by Matthew McFadden, is marrying into the family, so he's like bottom of the rung. He's not part of the family. And then in the first episode, so it's not a spoiler, cousin Greg arrives, who's like lower down the rung than Tom. So Tom is such a good actor that he's like this meek, subservient, like trying to impress everyone, what we think really nice guy. And then the first chance he gets, he does just a 180, and it's just horrific to cousin Greg. And like, it's so well played by him, and as he goes on, he's just gets better and better and better. And then the guy who plays Kendall, who's like, I can't remember the actor's name, but he's one of the best actors I've ever seen.
Jeremy Strong.
Jeremy Strong, he's brilliant. They're all brilliant, and as the show goes on, you get to know each character more and more and more. And honestly, I just loved it, but ultimately, at the end of the day, as much as I loved it, and week to week was just, or we were kind of binging it because we recorded it, but just dying to see the next episode. But ultimately, for me, it's a step in the wrong direction to have this many men in a cast and to have everyone being white, and I just didn't. That just left me unsettled, and I thought it was unnecessary.
Well, can I say this was my number one of the year?
Yeah.
I think I'm not sure what more I can say that you've already said, because I thought it was just a brilliant piece of work. Like you said, it works. First and foremost, as a family drama, it's a classic dysfunctional family drama. In that these are all they're a dysfunctional family, but they're also dysfunctional people. They've all grown up, except for the father, who's a sort of self-made media mogul millionaire, whatever.
And he's brilliant, the dad.
He's played by Brian Cox excellently. But they've all grown up in this world of money and privilege, and they're completely out of touch with society, with everyday normal values.
They're horrible.
Their moral compasses are off. They're all horrible people. They're all backstabbing each other. It's fascinating, and it's the classic sort of fascinating, entertaining stuff.
It's very Shakespearean, isn't it?
In fact,
so epic.
If you take a step back, actually looking at my list here, every single one of these stories are about rich people. American Vandal is about a very rich private school. American Crime Story, Versace, largely centres on the wealth of Giovanni Versace and the antithesis of that with Andrew Cunanan. Sharp Objects is about a wealthy heiress, basically, or in the south of America. BoJack Horseman is about a ridiculously wealthy former TV star. And Succession is all about wealthy people.
Well, this is why you need shows like Insecure that are just about normal people.
But
you need to balance
there is
scales.
something fundamentally fascinating about wealth as people watch. That's why Keeping the Kardashians is so popular. It's why Donald Trump was a popular candidate before he was even elected. There's something very...
It's intoxicating
and attractive about it all.
And it's so otherworldly to normal people. Like, to watch that kind of wealth is just like fascinating.
But however,
sickening.
I think for the most part, I think pretty much 4 out of 5 of these stories that I just mentioned painted in a very, very negative light. It's not seen as something you would aspire to.
No.
Certainly, all of these every single one of the characters in all of these shows are dysfunctional, probably except Giovanni Versace, who is presented as a
nice normal guy.
Very benevolent
but he's barely a character in the show. Like, it's all about Andrew.
Yeah, but it's interesting that his what he does with his wealth and who he is as a person is always presented as very grounded and down to earth. But largely the wealth in all of these shows, and in particular Succession, is not an attractive asset. If anything, it has alienated these people. It's made them into absolutely horrible monsters for the most part.
A big part of it as well, I think, in them, like if you look at the characters in Succession versus like Giovanni Versace, he's a self-made millionaire, and like the dad in Succession this is like about the people who are born into wealth. So they're born with such entitled privilege that they think that everything they want should be theirs, and they're shocked when there's obstacles in their way. And I mean, they do it really funny with Kieran Culkin, who's just brilliant in the show, and like at one point he's given quite a big responsibility, and he blows it in the most spectacular way, and there's a whole scene where we just see him receiving this information and he literally can't compute it because nothing ever goes wrong for him in his life, and it's absolutely brilliant TV to watch. And I think this explores really well that just entitlement of people who just think that everything they do should be completely validated by the rest of the world because that's how they perceive themselves.
But it's also classic sort of Shakespearean family tragedy stuff. It's backstabbings and betrayals, but it's also like insanely hilarious. Some of the best dialogue you will ever hear in any television show, for the same reason that and you can just tell it's that infusion of Jeremy Armstrong's like crackling wit that you saw in Peep Show, and the thick of it is another one we forgot to. Did we mention that?
We did mention
that. We did mention that. That he wrote on, which has some of the best insults.
Yeah.
That's another thing this show has. When a character is insulting another character, it's done so creatively and so enjoyably.
So good.
Lastly, I'll stop banging on about it, but you've already called out Brian Cox and Jeremy Strong, who played Kendall, and Matthew McFadden, who played Tom, is outstanding. Probably the best in the series. But I think Sarah Snook is brilliant as Shiv, the daughter.
Yeah, she's brilliant.
And that's probably one of the more understated performances in this show. But she's an actor.
And she's Australian as well. Literally all these amazing
actress.
Australian actors and everything now.
And lastly, Greg, played by
Greg the
Nicholas Braun, who is really there for, as I said, with BoJack Horseman.
He's basically Jonah from the Veep.
Yeah, very much.
But not as stupid as
that
Jonah.
character.
Yeah.
But
he's even really tall. Obviously, this writer thinks really tall people are really funny physically.
He's very similar to that. But he's presented, as I said, with BoJack Horseman, like at pretty much as he's the comic relief. He's a kind of one-note joke character who's the punchline of everything, and is just so funny to watch.
So good. But even he turns around in the end.
He's got his own little character arc,
and he's got his own agenda, which I enjoyed watching.
So that's it. I think everyone needs to watch the show. I don't think enough people are watching this or talking about it. So this is my strong recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, number 1 from you, number 2 for me. We freaking loved this. Like, we were like screaming at the end of episodes of this, and like the music is like do 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 do.
We'll throw the music in.
At one point when we had just finished watching this, but then we were watching Haunting Hill House, and I couldn't sleep because I was so scared. And then the bloody Succession theme song was going through my head. I was like, I have to get that. What we should do at the end of this segment, before we get on to the next bits, after I've done my number 1, let's play a bit of the Succession music. Okay, yeah, because everyone needs to hear it.
So what's your number 1 of the year?
So my number 1 is something you haven't seen because I think it would have been on your list. Killing Eve, which I know was topping a lot of lists this year.
Watch that.
Yeah, it was one of those ones we were going to watch together, and then I got bored of waiting for Dave, and I just binged it all on iPlayer, where I watched it all on BBC iPlayer. It aired in BBC America earlier this year and came out later in the UK, so it was one of those ones that by the time it launched in the UK, already loads of buzz about it, which is really fun. I would say it's a funny thing. It's a show about a serial killer called Villanelle. She's being hunted by a British agent called Eve, who's played by Sandra Oh of Grey's Anatomy fame, who I love, also in Sideways, but I just think she was always the standout in Grey's Anatomy, and I've really missed her on the show actually, as someone who's still watching it 15 seasons in. But honestly, it's all about Jodie Comer, so she plays Villanelle, she's an assassin, and honestly it is one of the most joyous and wonderful things I've ever seen. So Phoebe Walker-Bridge wrote it, who wrote Fleabag, which is a show we both watched this year, but it's not from this year, so we can't call it out in this list, but we absolutely loved Fleabag. It's so
very funny
and so quick-witted and so clever. And what this show is brilliant, because it's basically like, it's a spy thriller, but it's a comedy, and there's like workplace politics, but it's kind of what I was talking about in the last one. It's so obviously written by a woman. Like, I could have told you it was written by a woman without even knowing who wrote it. Like, so often in these kind of shows, victims are like, almost always victims are like attractive young women, right? In like drama, in like you watch any episode of CSI or whatever, like it's always the dead woman is always the trope. And so often when a woman is a villain, she's like battling inner demons, or she's acting out revenge against a specific person. None of that for Villanelle. She is just a psychopath, and she revels in murdering people in like the most creative ways, as funny ways. Like, she dresses in costume for every murder. Like she'll literally go in in like dressed as a nurse and like murder someone in a hospital, or she'll go to like a part. She goes in one of the episodes. She has to murder somebody who's really rich. She breaks into their house while the party's happening downstairs. Goes upstairs, borrows one of their dresses, goes down and murders someone. At one point, she's murdering someone and. She's like about to kill them, and then she's like, ooh, she rubs like a silk throw on the bed, and she's like, what brand is this? And they tell her, and she kills them. And then later on we just see her rubbing that same brand like on her own bed, like she's furnished her house with this brand because she was so into it. She does all sorts of elaborate things with like perfumes. She just like, the costumes in this show are just absolutely brilliant, and the character's just obsessed with fashion, and that's just like one thing about her, and like she does everything with such style and such aplomb, but it's so funny. And then so she's a completely dimensionalized but psychopathic villain, and Jodie Comer is such a great actress. Oh my god, like she's so funny. She's got a quite unusual face, and she's just one of those actors who knows how to use that face, and she's got such like a huge presence on screen, and she's just absolutely deadpan and brilliant. And Sandra Oh, who I mentioned I love, her character Eve, is just, again, it's just actually just a career woman. She's a bit frustrated in her career, not quite getting to where she wants to be, starts figuring this thing out. She's a bit sick of her husband, and it essentially becomes like a cat and mouse thing across Europe. And there's all these amazing, like, you know, like European destinations. It's also got Fiona Shaw, who's Carolyn, who's like the head of Russian operations for MI5. And then, so like, reams upon reams of like just perfectly written, interesting, dynamic female characters, which I just love, and that's what I want to watch. And then Kim Bodnia from The Bridge, who we love, The Bridge. Martin Rhoda from The Bridge. He's in it as her like handler. Like he gives her gives her the people she needs to kill, and he's absolutely brilliant. And when Kim Bodnia and Villanelle are on screen together, like I just died of happiness with every scene. And then her and Eve are like obsessed with each other, and it's this amazing relationship. And it was quite a short box set. I can't remember how long, but like it was under 10 episodes. And because it was made originally for BBC America, it was actually only like 40 minutes long as opposed to an hour, which I really liked. So yeah, I watched them all on iPlayer. They're all still there on BBC iPlayer, and it's just joy. And because it's completely fictionalized, I enjoyed all the murder scenes. Like they're really funny. You would love it, Dave. Like honestly, you need to watch it.
I really need to watch it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I jumped ahead and then just binged it all without you.
Well, it's on my things I need to watch.
It's a complete binge,
which you'll hear later.
And it's on like so many people's lists of TV shows of the year. Like you would absolutely love it. It's just freaking brilliant. And I just think Phoebe Waller-Bridge is like a genius. She's such a great writer. It's adapted from a series of books which I haven't read. But yeah, she's absolutely amazing.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break to eat all this cheese that's been sitting in front of us.
Oh wait, I haven't gotten to my number one.
That was your number one.
No, that's my number two. I've skipped one. Or did you skip one? That was my number two.
You've skipped one.
I haven't. I actually haven't. Or I skipped one. Let's have a look at your list there. We're keeping this in the podcast. This is riveting.
All mine.
So you had...
This is not staying in.
American Vandal, Crime Story, Sharp Objects, BoJack Horseman, Succession. And I had Insecure, Haunting of Hill House, Assassination of Gianni Versace, Succession, Killing Eve.
Is your number one? That's 5.
Oh shit, I made a list of 6. I had a different number one.
What? Kathy.
I think we have to leave this in, and I have to quickly say my number one. And I'm sorry, I've completely cheated the list. I can't believe how badly I've done that. That is absolutely hilarious. I'm sorry.
Are you unable to count?
I clearly was unable to count because I didn't number them.
Come on.
Okay, really quickly, you've already mentioned it. Sorry. My number one of the year is Sharp Objects.
For God's sake.
Killing Eve's my number 2.
You absolutely ruined
Killing
this
Eve's
list.
my number 2. I was just thinking.
You literally said my number 1 was Killing Eve.
I meant to say number 2. It's because I have too many in, and I'm working backwards on my own list. Okay, Sharp Objects. Really quickly. Second year in a row. I know. Second year in a row that my top pick is a HBO adaptation of a female author's book. I had actually read this, same as Big Little Lies, which was my number 1 last year. And
I'm going to eat some cheese.
Eat some cheese. In both instances, it didn't matter that you'd read the book, because often it does and ruins things. So basically, it was written by Gillian Flynn, as Dave said. And it's really different from Big Little Lies. Like, I'm fascinated it's from the same guy. One of the big differences is that, like, Big Little Lies is really heavy on plot, and, like, it's a really big whodunit.
Sorry, it wasn't written by him, it was directed.
I meant to say. This one is really light on plot, but what it's really heavy on is character and atmosphere. And like Amy Adams is obviously standout. She plays Camille, who's just the most fascinating character. Like, she's so self-aware and clever, and yet she medicates herself very heavily with alcohol and sex. But she's aware she's doing it, but she can't stop herself doing it, and that's quite fascinating. And I mean, she had a horrific childhood, and she's got a history of like very dark things. And Amy Adams got so under the skin of this character to the point where I read that they wanted her to do season 2 and said she couldn't do it. Patricia Clarkson, as you mentioned, who's amazing as the mother. Their tension was unbearable for me to watch. And then again, you mentioned Eliza Scanlon as Amma. Absolutely, like this is was her second role after being in Home and Away for 15 episodes. I looked her up on IMDb. So
really?
Another Australian Home and Away actor. Like, they're just taking
The Home and Away alumni are just killing
absolute
it.
amazing casting agents there. But I think what I heard now is because of the success of people like Chris Hemsworth, actually having Home and Away in your resume in LA can get you an audition.
Is that right?
Yeah, apparently. But she holds her own against Amy Adams, like Oscar-winning actress Patricia Clarkson, and honestly, she's better than them in some scenes. Like, it's fucking brilliant. She's basically a rollerblading psychopath.
She's got a great character.
And I read, and I'm not going to go on a bang about it because I've done an extra pick by accident and Dave's already talked about it, but I read a great piece in The Guardian where viewers were writing in, or readers were writing in their favourite shows of the year, and somebody wrote that Adora, who's the mom, copes with pain by hurting her daughters. Camille, Amy Adams, copes with pain by hurting herself, and Amma copes with pain by hurting others, and I just thought that was the best summary of the show. But honestly, it's I've never seen a more atmospheric show than this. Like, I know you said it was hot and sweaty, but I would say you just lived and breathed the setting. Like, and I had read...
But it's oppressive.
Oh, it's unbelievably
that's why
well done.
The directing is so brilliant.
It's brilliant.
Atmospheric, and the way it's shot is just like...
It's just perfection.
Dirty and like uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's like you feel oppressed by this show. You feel what what's Amy Adams' character is, Camille is feeling.
Yeah.
Like, she feels trapped in this tiny town.
And there's barely at one point we were like, God, what are we even watching? Like, there's barely a plot to it, and yet you can't take your eyes off
background
it. Yeah,
as such.
But I mean, the end, the plot's
By
brilliant.
the time the plot comes back,
it's absolutely worth it.
It hits you with a bang.
I mean, Gillian Flynn, I really enjoy her books. I had read this book before as well, and I just think she just. Girl writes a good twist. That's what I would say. Okay, so there's my number 1. I'm so sorry. My number 2 was Killing Eve, and I fucked up the rest of my list. And now we're going to cut to the Succession.
So we started
music.
on your number 6.
Yeah, we're going to cut to the Succession music while we eat our food.
You're a disaster. Right, you've heard our top TV of the year, but we asked you on Twitter, what are your best and worst TV shows of the year? So we're going to read some of them out now, and we've also, at the end of this episode, we're going to collate. We ran some numbers, we did some crunching, and we've basically collated exactly what your overall best TV show and worst TV show as a group was. This year, so we're going to announce that at the end of the show. Kathy,
stuff.
Read some of these out.
So Tom Silcock tweeted only his best things, only positive stuff. This Is Us, Star Trek Discovery, obviously BoJack, Atlanta, and Killing Eve.
Strong list.
Daniel Bennyworth Gray wrote Daredevil and Patrick Melrose.
Haven't seen Patrick Melrose. No interest in it, really.
I saw the pilot. I really liked it.
Oh.
And then I just didn't watch anymore, as is my want. Colin Corcoran, Best, Succession, My Brilliant Friend, Killing Eve, Get Shorty, Worst, This Is Us. So 2 mentions of This Is Us. Very different sides of the coin there. Jordan Alexander, Best, This Is Us, The Walking Dead. Leon H. Dempsey, Best, Luke Cage, BoJack Horseman, Daredevil, Inside Number 9, and No Offence.
Oh, that's the live show Inside Number 9. I really want to see that.
Yeah, me too. Craiger said, High Maintenance is extraordinary television. Barry came right out of left field, always worth a shout. And Always Sunny season finale was jaw-dropping. Some of the best foreshadowing I've seen. Philip Fort said, Killing Eve. Jodie Whittaker's Doctor Who. And worst was Westworld. Yes.
I still have never watched Doctor Who, have you?
No.
We're not Whovians,
someday,
as they say.
And last but not least is Mary, my mom's friend from Birthing Mamas, who said Best, The Handmaid's Tale, Better Call Saul, and Worst, House of Cards.
Okay, and we'll be reading more of these out later and announcing what your group best and worst are.
Yes.
But before we do that, we're going to throw over to ourselves for our most honourable TV mentions of the year.
Yes.
Hello, we're back. We are now out for a walk.
Walking around Cork on a surprisingly dry day, and we are straight into our honourable mentions of TV shows for 2018. So I've got a couple on the list. Bodyguard has to be there. Most talked about TV show of the year, the biggest hit on the BBC in something like
In Britain
10
anyway.
years. It's actually been really big in the US on Netflix now, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Biggest like water cooler moment of the year in terms of TV, which is really great in a year that we didn't have Game of Thrones. It was only about 6 episodes, but I just loved watching it every week, as silly as it was, and coming into work the next day and just chatting about it with everyone, which you never get really with TV anymore.
It was a great TV event.
It was really fun. The other one I have to say is The Bisexual, which is an E4 comedy that we haven't finished yet. Like, we're getting through it slowly, because it's not one of those shows where you feel like you're like The Bodyguard, where you're dying to watch the next episode live. But yeah, I really enjoy it.
It's really funny.
It's really funny. The Sinner, which I mentioned last year, and again, The Sinner season 2 came on Netflix this year, and it's just totally fun and a great binge, honestly. Dairy Girls, which is a comedy that was on Channel 4 this year.
Yeah.
So funny, and I love the setting, and it's not just that it was set in Ireland, it's just a fantastic cast and a really warm, humorous show. Sally Forever, which is a Sky Atlantic comedy that is like really explicit warning on this.
What's that?
It's a comedy on Sky Atlantic, and kind of the opposite of The Bisexual. So The Bisexual is about a woman who is gay and then comes out as bisexual, kind of to the horror of her gay friends, whereas this is about a straight woman who comes out as gay. And but it's made by Julia Davis, who's really funny, and there's a funny sex scene in the first episode, and it's a bit like, those piss take sex scenes in like those Naked Gun movies.
Yeah.
It's like that, but it's between two women. And often when I'll watch like a sex scene with two women, I'm cringing because I know a man has directed it, and it just makes me really uncomfortable. But this was like starring Julie Davis, and she's in the sex scene, and it's so graphic and so funny, like almost to the lines of, that movie with Emilio Estevez where he's like sizzling bacon on someone's stomach. Like, the sex scene's almost like that. It's so funny.
Hot Shots.
Hot Shots, yeah, it's really like that. And finally, I've only seen a few episodes, but the ones I've seen I loved is Queer Eye,
And it was
the
Charlie
new
Sheen, sorry.
Queer Eye from the Straight Guy, and on Netflix they've brought it back, and I thought that was really
Have you
fun
been
this
watching
year.
that?
Yeah, it's kind of my go-to when I've nothing else to watch.
What
Yeah.
is this secret life you have for me when you're watching the shows I haven't even heard of? And Queer Eye. I want to watch Queer Eye. That looks
It's
like
really
fun.
heartwarming.
Are you done?
Yeah.
All right. I got a few to reel off. The Haunting of Hill House. I think you've kind of covered it.
Loved it.
I thought it was really, really good, really strong, brilliant. A horror show, but also just a great piece of family drama, like inter-sibling rivalry, flashbacks told, 2 parallel timelines, superb stuff. Daredevil, which you didn't watch. Because it's generally pretty ropey, but this is the sort of the last of the Netflix Marvel shows that I think they're all basically been canned now, essentially, except
Punisher, we like that.
Punisher was fun, but this show, for following up from The Defenders, which was an awful load of shite, was really like a surprise return to form. Felt a lot like the first season.
Too little, too late.
Kingpin came back, Vincent D'Onofrio. It was a lot of fun. It goes on too long and it's not perfect, but there's one brilliant sort of extended take fight scene in a prison, which one of the best things I've seen this year. Rick and Morty came back for another season, which wasn't quite it was in my top 5 last year. Wasn't quite a slam dunk for me. Some brilliant episodes in here, but as a whole it didn't quite connect for me. Pickle Rick though, top notch. Big Mouth season 2, which is a show nobody's really talking about. It's an animated.
Where is it? Netflix?
Yeah, animated show on Netflix, created by Nick Kroll, who's sort of a famous American comedian. This is a really great show. It's ostensibly set around like teenagers, maybe 13, 14, sort of hitting puberty, and it's very honest, but it's very familiar, certainly from the male point of view, but it very well puts forward the female point of view as well. Not that I have any personal experience with that, but it's the gender balance in this is perfectly done, and they have hormone monsters, so they've literally represented puberty as a physical manifestation, like a monster that follows you around everywhere.
Sounds pretty apt.
It's so funny and gross and heartwarming. It's excellent. Star Trek Discovery, I think the second half of that came back at the beginning of this year, and it got much better. My God, and by the end, where that show went, is superb, and I'm very excited for the second series of that. Black Mirror Season 4, again, about half of them were really good, and the other half were just bleh. But some great stuff in there, as always. I mean, everyone knows that's a great show.
Yeah.
The bisexual, you've kind of talked about, I think is great fun. Bodyguard, for me, actually, Bodyguard was great fun, a lot of great water cooler show, but a kind of diminishing returns as it went on.
Fell apart by the end.
Really,
but excellent
really
opening episode. An amazing midway twist, which doesn't often happen.
Yeah.
Amazing midway twist.
But it kind of just didn't deliver on its promise for me, because the first 2 episodes of that were so strong. Maniac is a show you didn't watch, but I watched on. It's on Netflix with Jonah Hill and Emma Stone, which is just really weird and out there. Again, didn't really pull it together by the end for me, but it was really interesting. Oh, and it's that's directed so beautifully. Again, another show directed all by the same guy, who's Kerry Fukunaga, who did True Detective Season 1. And is just one of those talents. Like, this is a beautiful show, and the production design, it's incredible. It's in this like sort of alternate sci-fi world, which is just excellent. Altered Carbon, another sci-fi show on Netflix, which was really stupid.
Oh, I really enjoyed that though.
But we did
we
enjoy
binged it.
It's
yeah.
really stupid and kind of bad, but a lot of fun. The Dragon Prince, quickly. Some of the writers from Avatar: The Last Airbender, the TV show, which is one of my favourite children's shows of all time, have made this show, another show for Netflix. Very interesting visual style, and it's a lot of fun. I'm still going through it. The Expanse. I have to talk about The Expanse very quickly, because nobody
then,
else
Dave,
is.
you should have had it in your top 5 list.
There's no room for all these great TV shows. I watched The Expanse Season 2 this year, and I know it's actually on to Season 3, but more people need to watch The Expanse. If you like old school, big operatic sci-fi, this is absolutely amazing. The Sinner Season 2, you've already mentioned. This is my first experience with The Sinner. I haven't seen the first season, but this is...
Yeah, you don't need to have seen the first season.
No, it's standalone, and it is great. I thought it was great fun. And then Dark, lastly, another Netflix German sci-fi thing.
Oh, Dark! I meant to mention that one. I love Dark.
Yeah, Dark
was brilliant.
Great, like twisty sci-fi plot, kind of 80s Stranger Things vibes in ways, but just like really entertaining.
Yeah.
All right, that's it.
Okay, great list. Now we're going to be back after some more of our lovely listeners' best and worst TVs of the year.
Alright, so now we're going to hear a few more of your best and worst TV shows of the year. Kathy, go to the Twitter machine.
So Ian said La Casa de Papel, aka Money Heist. Netflix really couldn't think of a better name. Translation: show of the year for me, maybe not just this year. Richard Chamberlain, best Haunting of Hill House, worst American Horror Story. Ian O'Driscoll, Killing Eve was the best series this year. Also loved Atlanta, Daredevil, Better Call Saul, Legion.
Better Call Saul.
Yeah,
I need to go back to that.
Everyone's saying it's better than Breaking Bad now. I haven't watched it. Laura O'Dowd says best have to be Patrick Melrose and BoJack Horseman. Jeff Howell's best was Haunting of Hill House, and the bisexual most disappointing was Trust. Worth was Keeping Faith. Never seen that. Tom George, great taste, best Sharp Objects and Killing Eve. Really bad, Fortitude. Stuart McM, hello, mine were Doctor Who, Dynasties, The Bridge, Bodyguard. Lee Thomas, Dark was my favourite, Big Mouth Series 2, Archer Season 9, Sharp Objects, all great. Lee Gant says The Dick Van Dyke Show. Thanks for that, Lee. Former guest of the show.
Lee I know Lee very well, and he doesn't watch anything new.
So
ever.
yeah,
He just
probably
watches things
really
from the
likes
50s.
Oliver Carey, best live episode of Inside Number 9, second series of This Country. Umar Motini, best Patriot, Killing Eve, Travellers.
Oh, Patriot. I really want to watch that. It's supposed to be amazing.
Travellers is my mom's favourite show, I can tell you that much. Latest season of Legends of Tomorrow. Mark Cole, best Killing Eve. And Danny JP says best Schitt's Creek, SCHITTS, never heard of it.
Me neither.
And worst
I'll
Bodyguard.
start Googling.
Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, we collated everything that our listeners tweeted us, and best of the year by a clean margin was Killing Eve. So our listeners have got fantastic taste, and worst was something that wasn't on either of our worst lists, Bodyguard. And I have to read out.
Really divisive.
Really
show.
divisive. So I have some of the comments collated because I thought they were so funny. So Craiger said it was absolutely horrific. Ian O'Driscoll says got progressively more ridiculous with each episode, and Janny JP said jump the shark much.
I think those are fair comments.
They're fair comments, but I also still enjoyed
It
it.
did get progressively worse.
It did. It's a very fair point, Ian
Yeah.
O'Driscoll. So anyway, back to us.
I had to kill you. I'm really sorry. I had to do it. Gotta go on my own. I had to kill you. I took it for so long.
Upsy daisy, here I come. I am the only upsy one. I'm the only daisy too. Ipsy, upsy daisy do.
Oh God, she's still going. They are. That is the dulcet tones of Upsy Daisy you're listening to. We are completing our TV review. Last couple of bits that we didn't get to in the car. Woo! So you may hear toddler.
And that's
noises in the
Oscar's
back.
new Christmas present.
Yeah.
Maybe you should give a bit of context as to
Bit of
what the hell
context.
that
It's
was.
actually Christmas Day. We're finishing. We're driving somewhere for Christmas, so we thought we'd finish this.
I'm
up.
driving.
Dave's driving.
You're recording.
I'm recording because we love recording and it's Christmas Day, so why not? But yeah, lots of Upsy Daisy noises. For anyone who doesn't know, she's a primary character in The Night Garden. Right.
One of the best.
One of the best.
One of my favourites.
Yeah.
She's up there with Iggle Pickle.
She's up there with her and Niggle Pickle kind of contend for first position. So
Alright, what are we doing?
Where
lead the
were
way.
we? I think we were just finished
We did our honourable mentions.
and we are now up to most disappointing. And I have Dave's list in front of me for the first time ever because he's driving, and I can tell you that we both have Westworld on our most disappointing list. Yeah.
Westworld Season 2.
What a disaster.
We didn't even finish it.
No.
It's just, I mean, look, I felt a little cold about the first season anyway, to be honest. I thought it was a really beautiful looking and well produced show, brilliant sci-fi and some superb performances, in particular Anthony Hopkins and Thandie Newton, who's amazing. But it's more like it wasn't. There's no emotional connection with any of the characters. I'm kind of still talking about the first season, but
Dave, onto the second season.
This extends into the second season. Don't really care about any of the characters. They can think they want us to care about Bernard in this season, but it doesn't work. The second season doubles down on the unnecessary, twisty storytelling of the first, like deliberately playing with audience understanding of timelines. Like the first few episodes of the second season takes place over like 4 different timelines for no reason at all. It's just deliberately obscured storytelling, which Jonathan Nolan loves to do, which is
But it's
fine as a
tedious.
gimmick in Memento, but it's unnecessary and tedious in this instance. I found it a real slog.
And also, I'm sorry, but they took away the primary function of it, and lots of it isn't in Westworld anymore. So to me, I'm not interested. It's like Love Island not being, I guess, in the
Well,
sunshine.
there I disagree. No, Winter Love Island, make that happen. I disagree with you there, actually, because I think they had to move the thing on, and I think it was a natural progression. And actually, one episode in particular, I forget the one it was, 4 or 5 maybe, but one episode completely shifts focus to a whole. I won't say any spoilers, but let's say a complete shift of focus away from Westworld.
Eastworld.
Fine, okay, you just said it then.
Come on, we're talking about Westworld too much. Okay, Thandie Newton's the only good thing left
Anyway,
in it.
that was a great great episode. That was,
And we
really
didn't
good.
finish it, which is terrible for a show we were completely addicted to. Right, I also had on my most disappointing list The Affair season 4, which I'm
Oh, yeah.
very disappointed to say because it was on I'm pretty sure it was in my top 5 last year, season 3.
Can I
And
quickly
again-
add that to my...
No,
Mine
it's
must
not on
disappoint.
your list, and therefore you don't get to say it.
What?
And now again, and this is just, this is just a sign of how bad it was. I didn't get past 3 episodes of this season. I think Dave,
Did you do
didn't-
3?
Yeah, I did 3.
I did 1.
And
That
literally,
first episode is one of the worst episodes of television imaginable. It's like Dangerous Minds.
yeah, really bad, really disappointing. Should have given up the ghost. And I think they're doing one last season, which is just like, ugh, whatever. So I would tell anyone, watch up to season 3 and then
But
give up.
that's the definition of disappointment, because the first 3 series of that show are superb. Some of the best writing and performances in television
I mean, the
history.
performances are still great. The problem is the writing's suddenly gotten bad
Oh
because
my
they don't
god!
know what to do with it.
Like
yeah.
absolutely dreadful. But the show's been absolutely kind of spinning its wheels for a while now. But it's somehow managed to make that work. Like a series that kind of only had enough plot for 1 season, managed to wrangle 3 out of it very effectively.
And
but
get
now
better every year.
They've finally run out of steam.
Yeah.
So
Okay, Dave, next
awful.
on your list is
Remind me.
The Good Place.
Okay, Oscar. The Good Place. Okay, so for me, I think this was one of my best shows last year, or at least it was in the honourable mention. The first 2 series of The Good Place are absolutely outstanding. It's out of the gates like season 1. That show knew exactly what it was doing. It was very confident. It was very different to any other sitcoms that were on telly at that, like even now. It's very, very funny. It's got its like tone of voice down pat.
Dave, you're giving it praise. This is in your most disappointing list.
Hang on, like, you're gonna lay the table here, right? What's the definition of the word disappointing? It means you have high hopes for something. It's really good.
I just
And
say
then the
holding
third
a podcast
season-
recorder is really tiring.
Look,
And
the first 2 seasons of this are excellent. The third season is really, really bad. Very, very disappointing. Completely directionless. Doesn't know what it's doing anymore. The jokes are still sharp, so nothing's changed there. The performances are still fun, but it's like they've just entirely lost drive. There's no momentum anymore. It kind of shifts focus on what it's doing like 3 or 4 times in the space of a few episodes. Now, I will say it did finally pick itself up with the last 2 episodes, and the direction it seems to be heading in now definitely seems to be a good course correction. So it seems to be back on track, but very disappointing.
okay, and Dave, you had one more on your most disappointing list. Do you remember what it was?
Arrested Development,
Yes.
season 5. Arrested Development is my favourite comedy of all time. The first 3 series of that I've watched so many times. It is a brilliant bit of television. The long-running gags that they construct in that, the sort of brilliant ensemble that are all so hilarious for their own reasons and like absolutely sparkle on screen together. Dipped in the 4th season and famously didn't quite work. It was quite ambitious, but the 5th season, kind of Mitch Hurwitz, the creator, tried to just pick straight up from where season 4 left off, which instantly leaves you with a confusing mess.
I was so confused. I couldn't follow him.
Yeah, and then you end up with half an episode of Ron Howard trying to explain to you everything that, and it's lost its spark, it's lost its chemistry. It's this show is just a shambling corpse. It's so sad to watch. There was maybe 1 or 2 solid laughs in this, but it's just a husk of a thing. I don't know if I can even continue with the second half of the season 5.
Okay, very disappointing for Dave. Now, my guilty pleasures, I've got a couple. Top guilty pleasure for me is the current season of House of Cards. I think I may be the last person in the world left watching it. It's terrible. I watch it and narrate it to Dave as he's in another room because he can't even be bothered watching it. So Kevin Spacey got written out of it, and as everyone knows, and now Robin Wright is the main character, and they're very lucky that actually before his scandal and he was removed from the show, he'd essentially been written out of the White House anyway in the last season, so it makes narrative sense that he's not there, so they're lucky about that. But other than making narrative sense that he's not there, the show does not work, and it's become like a pantomime, to the point where, and I'm not finished it yet, but the last episode I watched ended with Claire.
Wait, don't spoil
This
it.
is not a spoiler. The end of the last episode I watched ended with Claire singing to camera. really menacingly, and I like looking at the camera the way Frances Underwood used to do, and I was like, I just can't cope with this. And yet I stayed up till like midnight recently binging it because I was just so enjoying like laughing at it. Greg Kinnear is terrible in it. Patricia Clarkson, who we've both said is amazing in Sharp Objects, is terrible in it. Robin
really?
Wright Penn is terrible in it. So you
Robin
know
Wright.
Robin Wright, sorry. So you know when really good actors are terrible in something, like that something terrible like has gone wrong.
She's terrible in it.
Everyone's terrible
But
in
she's
it.
brilliant.
I know.
And she's actually great as Claire Underwood.
Yeah. So everyone's terrible, like across the board. Okay, one that we both have on our list.
That show for me died years ago.
Yeah, I mean it's
Ran out of.
it's gone from a show that I would like literally block out a weekend when it
That's been
released.
huffing fumes for about 3
It
seasons.
has
now.
done. We used to like block out a weekend when it came so that we could just binge it all weekend, and now I watch it while I'm doing the laundry. And then another one we both have on our list, Guilty Pleasure, Love Island. Guilty Pleasure
Yeah.
of summer 2018.
That's my absolute
in the
guilty
Cullen Corkery
pleasure.
household. I mean, there's not much to say about
I
it other
mean-
than we were completely hooked for about 3 weeks, and then it kind of ran out of steam. But for 3 solid weeks, we were obsessed with Love Island.
I have there's a definition of guilt when
It
I watch
is.
Love Island because I don't really.
It's horrible.
I'm not a proponent of it. I
No.
can't really like.
I hate everything
I
about
think,
it.
I think it signals the end of civilization in so many ways. But my God, it's well-made
Yeah.
television and it's very,
Very, very fun to watch.
Very fun to watch.
And then I have something that we briefly alluded to at the top of the episode. In the Night Garden, become quite a guilty pleasure in our house.
That's
Yeah.
not a guilty pleasure. That's just a pleasure.
It's a pure pleasure.
That's an absolute pleasure. That show in
I
the
know.
Night Garden, and I love that you've segued into this from our opening with
Yeah,
Upsy Daisy.
totally
That's
intentional.
an absolutely genius show. If you have kids, then you've probably already seen it. But if you're a new parent and you're looking for just a wonderful, wacky, inventive, and quite sweet, bizarre pre-toddler show, this is the one. I mean, this is like.
Honestly, if you're not a parent, just get pissed and watch it some night, and you will be in for a treat. It's trippy stuff.
Psychedelic.
Yeah.
But I will say another great thing about In the Night Garden is most kids shows, Peppa Pig, etc. You're looking at a 14-minute runtime, which doesn't buy you a lot of time to like get the housework done or whatever. But 29 minutes
Yeah,
on In the
that
Night
sounds
Garden,
amazing.
you'll get your house clean. You'll get your
Or you'll just have a cup of coffee.
SHIT in order
Yeah.
while your baby's watching that show.
And then finally, I have one more guilty pleasure, Dave. You don't. You just said Love Island. I have 911, which I mentioned earlier, which is like the new Ryan Murphy show. It's in season 2 now. It's on Sky Witness here in the UK. I think it's on Fox in the States. It's freaking brilliant. It's like Grey's Anatomy on steroids, and that also segues to the fact that Grey's Anatomy, shout out, season 15 is still really good. So I've lots of guilty pleasures. And now with our last category is things that we should have seen but we didn't, and that we feel bad about, and that we aim to watch in 2019. And we both.
Oh, catchy!
Yeah.
Is that what we call it?
Well, actually, it's called Should See. And we both have The Bridge season 4.
Yeah.
we
now,
both.
to be fair, all right.
We should have watched it. Do you know
Shout
what?
out to you here because you've been trying to get me to watch it for ages.
For ages, I was saying, please, can we watch The Bridge? And then you're so tired, and both of our problem is we're obsessed with the first 3 seasons of The Bridge, but because they haven't aired in a while, we couldn't quite remember season 3. So we were trying to find a recap. Then we were too tired. Then this is so boring, but we had all of them recorded from when they aired on BBC on our Sky Plus box, and then we changed to Sky Q and we lost the recordings, and that was the end of it then. So I think next year we just need to buy it on DVD because it's not something you can find on demand.
Plus, do you know there's I wish there were like a word for that sort of barrier of like starting a new series of something. Do you know, like,
you're gonna love
it's
it.
so hard to like
Yeah.
just take that leap of faith and put on the first episode, even if it's something you know is going to be good.
Yeah,
I bet the
particularly
Germans have a
Bridge,
word for
which
that.
we've always absolutely adored. So we're both mortified we haven't watched it.
It's probably called Gebingenschweiß.
Dave has obviously Killing Eve, which you didn't watch. You don't need to say anything. You should have seen it. You didn't.
Oh, I can't
Yeah.
wait to see it though.
To be fair,
Are they making more of that?
They are making season 2.
Better
I have
catch
The
up.
Clinton Affair, which I really wanted to watch, which is this history doc on kind of all around the Clinton scandal, and apparently it's amazing. Again, it's been sitting on my planner. Haven't watched it. I've been too busy watching In the Night Garden and 911 and Grey's Anatomy. Dave, you finally have.
I think I know my other one is Atlanta season
Yes.
2. That's Donald Glover's show. By all accounts, that season is brilliant. The first season was quite something. I love Donald Glover, and this is very much his own thing. It feels very much his voice. It's singular. It's doing weird and interesting things in a year where he released This Is America, which I think the music video for that was one of the more interesting bits of media released this year. So I really, really want to see it. And in particular, I think reading a lot of sort of top people's lists of the year, one episode in particular of this was number one for a lot of people.
And yet you missed it. You were too busy watching Love Island.
Yeah, no regrets though.
No regrets on Love Island.
The trick is guilty pleasure. I derive nothing but pleasure from Love Island.
So thank you everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed our TV review. Obviously we watch far too much TV. And we will be back next year with more TV talk for Game of Thrones when that returns, final season. Ooh.
Yeah.
We love our Game of
I
Thrones
don't know. Can we do another? Do people want us to record episodes on Game of Thrones?
Well, I hope so, because
Because that's going to be really hard to do.
A lot of people wrote to us last time saying please do it again.
Even last time we didn't have a baby.
Yeah, last time we didn't have a baby and we used to get up at 5 a.m. to watch it and record. That
I
ain't
guess
happening.
this time we are up at 5 a.m. anyway.
Yeah,
so.
but sadly we won't be watching Game of Thrones. We'll be doing it just a day later, I think, if people want us to. I don't care even if people don't want us to.
Let us know if you want more Game of Thrones episodes.
But thank you so much everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed our roundup of the year, and thank you so much to everyone who wrote to us on Twitter letting us know what they liked and for all your recommendations. Bye, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.